Welcome to the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. I am super excited for today's deep dive because, well, we are talking about one of our absolute favorite places on
Oh,
Earth.
definitely. Paris. We're always happy to talk about Paris.
Right, but today we are specifically diving into an experience that, honestly, it'll make you feel like you just stepped straight out of a classic mid-century movie.
Yeah, I mean, as a couple who has literally lived this exact experience, we can tell you it's just completely different from anything else.
It really is. So picture this, right? You step out of your Parisian hotel and the evening air is like super crisp. And instead of lining up behind 50 other tourists,
Ugh, holding those awful plastic audio guides.
right, exactly, waiting to board some stuffy glass enclosed tour bus, instead of that, you hear this deep, throaty roar of a vintage motorcycle engine just pulling right up to the curb.
And it is there just for you.
Just for you. You slide into this classic mid-century sidecar, you strap on a leather helmet, and suddenly you are no longer just like looking at Paris, you are completely immersed in it.
You're in it. Yeah. And for this deep dive, we've been looking through a massive stack of traveler reviews, itineraries, and all sorts of source materials detailing this very specific trend, exploring Paris from the seat of a vintage sidecar.
Which sounds amazing, but we're going to figure out if this is actually a legitimate way to understand the city or if it's just, an elaborate, highly photogenic Instagram trap.
Right, the ultimate Instagram stunt. But looking at the accounts we're analyzing, they paint a picture of an experience that fundamentally alters how you perceive a major metropolis.
Yeah.
And we're looking at two primary itineraries today. There's a quick, exhilarating 90-minute evening zip through the city, which runs around $169.
Okay, that's not bad.
Not bad at all. And then for the highly ambitious, there is this massive 5-hour journey priced around 599 euros. And that one actually pairs the open-air ride with the descent into the ancient Paris catacombs.
Okay, wait. A vintage sidecar and the catacombs. That is a wild combo. But, honestly, my immediate reaction to seeing these vintage sidecars buzzing around the Louvre or, dodging traffic on the Champs-Élysées is a mix of awe and just like sheer terror.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're thinking. Because we hear this all the time on the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. We try to always get ahead of your objections, and this is the big one.
Exactly. Anyone who has ever stood near the Arc de Triomphe knows that the massive roundabout there, the Place de l'Étoile, it looks less like a functional intersection and more like a competitive contact sport.
Oh, it's terrifying to watch.
It's insane. 12 avenues converge into one giant circle with absolutely no lane markings. It's just honking, swerving, and vibes.
Just immaculate chaos.
Literally.
Ah.
So before we get swept up in the romance of a vintage motorcycle ride, we really have to ask the most practical question. How is strapping yourself into a sidecar in the middle of Parisian traffic remotely safe?
Right, you're probably thinking, Paris traffic on a motorcycle. Is that actually safe?
I mean,
Or I have kids. Well, the reviews highlight that exact apprehension. But they also explain how the operators engineer the safety of the entire experience. It really comes down to a mix of physics and deep local expertise.
Okay, walk me through that.
So first, you are geared up properly. The operator provides homologated helmets, protective gloves, so, you aren't just out there completely exposed.
Right.
But more importantly, the drivers, and names like Raphael and Greg come up repeatedly in these glowing reviews. They are heavily trained in navigating this specific brand of urban chaos. They handle it brilliantly.
Maneuvering in that environment is practically a superpower. I've always thought of it like watching a highly skilled dancer leading a tango.
Oh, I like that.
Right? Like if you don't know the steps, a tango looks incredibly chaotic, maybe even a little aggressive with people spinning and weaving at high speeds.
Yeah, totally.
But the person leading the dance is in complete graceful control of every single millimeter of movement.
Oh.
And that has to be what the driver is doing in that traffic. They are leading the tango.
That analogy actually captures the mechanics of it perfectly. In France, they operate on a rule called priorité à droite, or priority to the right, which governs those massive roundabouts.
Right, which just melts my brain as an outsider.
Exactly. To a tourist, it looks completely lawless.
Yeah.
But to a seasoned Parisian motorcycle guide, it is a highly predictable rhythm. And the sources explicitly state this experience is designed and fully insured for passengers ranging from ages 8 to 99.
Wait, really? 8 years old?
Yeah. Actually, there is a very specific review in our stack from a family who took their 7- and 10-year-old kids out for a ride.
Oh, wow. They went even younger.
They did, and they described the evening not as a white-knuckle thrill ride, but as a beautiful night and an absolute dream.
Okay, trusting a 7-year-old in foreign traffic is the ultimate litmus test. If parents are walking away calling it a dream, the safety protocol has to be incredibly dialed in.
Absolutely.
Because, parents simply do not joke around with their kids in open-air vehicles.
No, they don't. And looking at the logistics outlined here, the operators lean heavily into removing any sort of friction from the experience, which is just VIP treatment all the way.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, you don't have to navigate the crowded metro to find some obscure meeting point with a tour guide holding a little flag on a stick.
Oh, those are the worst.
They literally pick you up right from your hotel, your Airbnb, or even curbside after dinner at a restaurant.
That is so slick. And what about the seating? Because I know people always wonder who gets to sit in the actual sidecar.
Right. So the seating arrangement is built for comfort rather than just novelty. It accommodates 2 passengers per vehicle. One person gets the cozy basket of the sidecar itself, which reviewers note is actually surprisingly plush and insulated.
Okay, good to know.
And the other sits securely pillion, so right behind the driver on the motorcycle saddle. And the materials even mention that infants can sit on laps in the sidecar, though obviously coordinating those specifics in advance is highly recommended.
Yeah, definitely let them know you're bringing a baby.
Yeah.
But, okay, so once you realize you aren't going to get sideswiped by a Parisian taxi, something really interesting happens to how you absorb the environment.
Oh, it completely changes.
It really does. Reading through these traveler accounts, the sensory details are what just jump off the page. Because being freed from a metal box, it changes everything about how your brain maps a location.
Yeah, we see a common thread in the psychology of travel here. When you take a bus or a taxi, you are basically passively observing the city through a glass frame.
Right. You're separated from it.
Exactly. You are physically separated from the temperature, the ambient noise, the smells. You're basically watching a movie of Paris. But in the sidecar, that barrier is completely gone.
It's just you and the city.
You're experiencing the city from a low-to-the-ground, unobstructed angle. Reviewers talk about feeling the distinct vibration of ancient cobblestones coming right up through the suspension.
Oh, that's such a cool detail.
And they describe smelling the butter from the bakeries as they zip past and hearing the clinking of glasses from the sidewalk cafes.
I love the idea that you aren't just looking at the culture, you are literally breathing it in.
Yes.
One guest recounted the surreal experience of the driver navigating right through the Arc de Triomphe traffic again, doing the tango, right? And then suddenly transitioning into a quiet, chic champagne break right in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Imagine that contrast.
Just incredible. Another mentioned the guide pulling over so they could grab a fresh hot crepe on the go. It's this incredibly appealing blend of high-end luxury and gritty, street-level authenticity.
And speaking of vibes, the sources strongly emphasize booking this specific experience after dark. We highly recommend the Night Rider option.
No, Paris at night is unmatched.
The night tours are overwhelmingly the highest rated. When the sun goes down, the manic energy of the commuter traffic thins out, the air cools down, and there's this softness of the evening that takes over. The city's complex lighting design really shines. Gliding through the illuminated streets shifts the atmosphere from a frantic daytime sightseeing checklist into something deeply cinematic.
I mean, Paris didn't get the nickname the City of Light by accident, right? Seeing the monuments glowing against the night sky without a tinted window in the way makes complete sense.
It's pure magic.
But okay, I do want to play devil's advocate for a moment here.
Okay, let's hear.
Because if I'm boofing a tool in a city with over 2,000 years of history, I want to walk away actually knowing something.
Right, you want substance.
Exactly. If you are moving that fast with the wind in your face, does it completely ruin your ability to actually learn about the city? Like, is this just adrenaline and aesthetics, or do you actually learn about what you are zooming past?
It's a great question, and the traveler reviews address that concern head on. They point to what is arguably the secret sauce of the entire operation.
Which is
The guides themselves. They are not merely chauffeurs in vintage jackets. They utilize these Bluetooth intercom systems built directly into the helmets, which allows them to maintain a running dialogue with the passengers over the roar of the engine.
Wait, that is brilliant. So they are narrating the history as you go.
They are, but it goes way beyond reciting Wikipedia facts. These drivers, guys like Raphael, Greg, and Bruno, they are consistently described as passionate curators of Parisian life.
Oh, that's so much better than a robotic script.
Exactly. Because they are locals, they share highly original, quirky historical context that you simply won't find on a standard audio guide. They point out architectural anomalies on hidden backstreets, they explain the political history behind certain monuments, and they just share deeply local anecdotes.
Okay, that brings up my absolute favorite detail from this entire stack of
Oh,
sources.
the bees!
Yes. One traveler specifically highlighted their guide, telling them the incredible story of the Notre Dame bee survivors. This completely answered my question about the educational substance of the ride.
The apiculture on the roof of Notre Dame is just a fascinating piece of modern Parisian history.
It really is. For anyone who hasn't heard this, there were literally hundreds of thousands of bees living in hives on the roof of the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Which a lot of people don't know.
Right. So when the devastating fire broke out in 2019, the whole world watched the roof collapse, and everyone just assumed the bees were incinerated.
Naturally.
But against all odds, they survived. The fact that a guide is taking the time to share a niche, beautiful story like that while you are physically looking at the cathedral, it shows they're providing a deeply curated narrative.
Yeah, and to understand why that story resonates so much with travelers, we have to look at the how and why behind it, which the guides explain beautifully over the intercoms.
Okay, how did they survive?
Well, the bees were kept on the roof of the sacristy, which sits about 30 meters below the main timber roof that actually caught fire. And because heat rises, the flames didn't reach them.
Oh, wow.
But more interestingly, bees don't have lungs like we do. Smoke doesn't asphyxiate them. When they smell smoke, they assume their hive is threatened by a forest fire, so their natural instinct is to basically gorge themselves on honey to prepare to flee.
Just load up on snacks for the road.
Exactly. But doing that actually makes them incredibly lethargic.
Yeah.
So the smoke from the burning cathedral essentially just put them to sleep.
That is incredible. They just took a nap while the world's most famous cathedral burned above them.
Literally slept right through it.
Learning the biological mechanics of how they survived while sitting in a vintage sidecar looking at the rebuilt spires, I mean, that is a moment that sticks with you forever. That's a difference between hearing a date and hearing a story.
Absolutely. And, beyond the storytelling, the operators go out of their way to blur the line between a formal tour guide and a well-connected local friend.
Yes, the extra mile.
Yeah, a driver named Raphael is repeatedly singled out in the sources for a really unexpected perk. He is essentially operating as a talented filmmaker and photographer.
He's directing a photo shoot while managing a motorcycle in Paris?
Basically, yes. The reviews describe him as having an incredibly sharp eye for detail and lighting. He directs these cinematic shots at specific scenic locations, ensuring the lighting of the monuments perfectly flatters the guests.
That is next-level service.
Oh, it gets better. He even carries an instant camera to print physical, vintage-style photos on the spot. So guests are handed a tangible souvenir of themselves in the sidecar before the ride is even over.
I love that so much. An instant analog print perfectly matches the whole vintage vibe of the vehicle. I mean, it is infinitely better than awkwardly handing your iPhone to a stranger on the sidewalk and praying they captured the Eiffel Tower without cutting your head out of the frame.
Oh my gosh, yes. And the hospitality extends even further into, local networking.
What do you mean?
Well, one guest noted that their guide actually used their local connections to secure them a table at a highly sought-after French restaurant that had a massive queue out the door.
No.
Yes. They skipped the line entirely just by being with the driver.
That is the ultimate flex.
Right. Additionally, they customize the routes on the fly. So if a passenger wants to see specific filming locations from a show like Emily in Paris, the guide just effortlessly pivots the route.
Super fun.
But if the passengers are, say, Parisian veterans who have already seen the Louvre a million times, the guide will immediately divert to lesser-known, hidden cobblestone alleys.
It sounds exactly like having a cool Parisian best friend showing you around.
That's exactly it.
You know the archetype, the friend who has lived in the city for a decade. They know the bouncer at the trendy bistro. They know all the secret shortcuts. And they just happen to own a gorgeous vintage motorcycle.
Of course they do.
You aren't treated like a tourist processing through a turnstile. You are a guest in their city.
And creating that specific psychological dynamic completely changes how a traveler absorbs a new culture. It completely removes the transactional feeling of tourism.
Yeah, it really does. So if the 90-minute ride flies by and you have both the time and the budget to go deeper, we really need to talk about the granddaddy of these itineraries.
Oh, yes. The ultimate ExcursionPass offering.
The sources detailed this massive 5-hour combination tour. Now, 5 hours is a serious commitment.
It is.
Let's break down how they structure a sidecar journey of that magnitude without completely exhausting the passenger.
Okay, so the 5-hour itinerary is basically an exercise in comprehensive urban geography. We call it the Grand Loop.
The Grand Loop.
Yeah. Instead of just popping over to a couple of monuments in a single arrondissement, it connects the central neighborhoods in this deliberate, sweeping arc.
So it's not just checking boxes.
No, not at all. The route spans from the Eiffel Tower to the Champs-Élysées. It glides past the Louvre and les Invalides, traces the Seine down to the Musée d'Orsay, and then it climbs all the way up those steep hills to Montmartre, the Sacré-Cœur, and the Moulin Rouge area.
Wow. I mean, covering that much ground on foot or even navigating the metro between all those distinct points, that would take 3 days and leave your feet absolutely covered in blisters.
Definitely.
Hmm.
But the real value here goes back to how we map a city in our minds. When you use the metro, you go underground at point A and you pop up at point B.
Right.
Your brain fails to build any connective tissue between the neighborhoods. The city just feels fragmented.
That is so true. It feels like a bunch of separate islands.
Exactly. But by tracing the exact geography above ground in a continuous open-air loop, you suddenly understand how the grand boulevards connect to the narrow medieval streets. You get the real geography of Paris mapped out in your head.
But surely they aren't keeping you strapped into the sidecar for 5 consecutive hours. I mean, even the most luxurious plush leather basket has its limits.
Of course not. The pacing is very intentionally broken up. First off, the package includes a planned lunch stop so you can refuel, stretch your legs, get some amazing food.
Essential.
But the most striking inclusion in this specific itinerary is a dedicated visit with admission to the Paris Catacombs.
Okay, let's just pause and imagine the juxtaposition of this itinerary.
It's wild.
It is wildly theatrical. You spend the morning zooming around the lively sunlit streets of modern Paris. You've got the wind in your hair. You are smelling the fresh espresso, admiring the grand Haussmann architecture, basically living this glamorous, high-adrenaline fantasy.
Living your best life.
Exactly. And then the engine shuts off, you park, and you physically descend deep underground into a damp 50-degree tunnel lined with the ancient, silent bones of 6 million Parisians.
The contrast is jarring, honestly.
Insane.
Yeah.
Is this just the ultimate light and dark tour of Paris?
It really is. And it's actually mathematically brilliant for combating travel fatigue.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So just a quick refresher on the catacombs. They were created in the late 18th century because the city's cemeteries, primarily the St. Innocent Cemetery, were literally overflowing.
Horrifying.
The soil was so saturated that basement walls and neighboring properties were collapsing under the weight of mass graves.
That is a nightmare.
It caused massive public health crises. So King Louis XVI ordered the bones to be moved at night to the abandoned limestone quarries beneath the city.
The history there is incredibly dark. I read they moved the bones by torchlight in covered wagons, accompanied by chanting priests, just to keep the public from panicking.
Exactly.
It is the absolute antithesis of a breezy ride down the Champs-Élysées. It feels like Act 1 is a lighthearted romantic comedy, and Act 2 is a gothic historical drama. Why on earth combine these two wildly different extremes?
Well, the sources reveal a deep understanding of sensory adaptation.
Okay.
If you look at nothing but beautiful, sunlit buildings all day, your brain stops processing them. You get what we call monument blindness.
Monument blindness, yes. Everything just starts to look the same.
Exactly. The grandeur becomes monotonous. By shifting drastically from a high-adrenaline open-air ride to a somber, silent, subterranean historical site, your brain undergoes a hard reset.
Oh, I see.
When you finally emerge from the catacombs back into the daylight, the vibrancy of the city hits you all over again. The dark literally makes the light seem brighter. You appreciate both experiences far more because they contrast so sharply.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You cure the monument blindness by plunging yourself into a sensory deprivation chamber made of history.
Precisely.
Okay, looking at the final logistics from our sources before we wrap up today, it's worth noting the practicalities of booking, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The operators offer highly flexible booking policies. Travelers can actually cancel up to 24 hours in advance for a full refund.
That's great.
It is a critical detail for peace of mind, especially because this entire experience is highly contingent on the weather. a vintage motorcycle ride really loses its charm in a torrential downpour.
Yeah, nobody wants a soggy sidecar experience, but when the skies are clear, the consensus from the reviews is unanimous.
Oh, completely.
Whether you opt for the 90-minute night cruise to watch the Eiffel Tower sparkle while you sip champagne, or you commit to the 5-hour geographical deep dive and that wild descent into the catacombs, this is just a profoundly personal way to see the city.
It strips away the mass-produced feeling of modern tourism and replaces it with something tactile and completely authentic.
So here is a final provocative thought to leave you with, something to mull over before your next trip. Think about how the literal physical medium of your travel shapes the memories you bring home.
Ooh, yeah.
When you remove the physical barrier of a bus window, when you stop looking at history through a pane of glass and actually feel the wind on your face and the vibration of the cobblestones, does an ancient city instantly feel more alive and relevant to you?
It definitely changes the connection.
When there is no barrier between you and Paris, does Paris finally become real?
The medium truly is the message, and how we move through a space dictates exactly what we take from it.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Journey on the Travel podcast by ExcursionPass. We hope this deep dive answered your doubts and maybe inspired you to ditch the tour bus on your next adventure. We'll catch you on the next one.